I'm Matt.
And I'm Nate.
And this is Not Quite Religious, a podcast where a Christian pastor and former evangelical turned atheist have conversations about faith, religion, philosophy, and life while drinking coffee.
Welcome to episode 33, which I think is going to be our holiday episode. We kind of missed the boat on Thanksgiving because of jury duty and everything, and 2 weeks of silence. So I'm proud of us for thinking ahead.
Yeah.
And recording this 2 weeks before Christmas, which is, I think, a week before Hanukkah. And I don't know when Kwanzaa is this year. And Diwali already happened.
Yeah.
So
we're so cosmopolitan. We're like, nailed Christmas. It's the 25th. Hanukkah, Diwali, Kwanzaa.
The ones based on the moon are way harder to track.
Yeah. So Merry Christmas, Nate, and Happy Holidays.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
And everybody else out there.
So I think, last episode we were talking about whimsy, but both of us have had tragedy happen in the past few days. So one of the things we were talking about on the break is, like, there's nothing to steal whimsy, like finding out your great-grandmother died, like, while you were working and, like, couldn't leave, or get a phone call that someone really close to you is extremely sick and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's almost like whimsy is like a privileged class.
Well, I just think life is all the things.
Yeah.
And my personal feeling is that you just have to face it all with as much realness and resolve and authenticity as you can. So if the thing is sad, you should be authentically sad.
Yeah.
And yet don't forget to be incredibly happy, because there's so much about life that's just like you take for granted, but it's unbelievable. And I was talking about, like, sunsets.
Yeah.
It's like last episode you were talking about your kids, like, you don't want to lose that stuff. It's like cows are amazing, actually. Like, life is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some people that forget to be happy, and I think there are some people that forget to be sad, and it's hard to be in the balance. But the balance is the ideal, where you're rightly sad to the degree that you ought to be sad about things that are sad. And
I think the people who don't get sad are willfully deluded. To go back to that one,
to use one of our favorite terms,
which, like, maybe that's not healthy. Maybe it is. Like, it's clearly a coping mechanism. But
to what degree is it healthy?
And, like, we were talking about, how do you wake someone up from delusion and just let them live in it? Like, I don't want to be the one who's like, I'm going to kill your kitten in front of you until you cry.
Yeah. I don't think you can do that, especially like when grief is fresh. And when grief is fresh, it's like you just let whatever that person's processes are. Yeah. Just let it be. I just think in general, I'm not even talking about counseling. I think in general, people often, I'm guilty. I think I tap too much into my dark side, like, to an unhealthy degree.
Yeah.
I actually know that about myself, which is a step in the right direction. But and that makes me, and has made me, now that I know it, I'm not as harsh of a critic as I once was, but I used to be a really harsh critic on people, like people like when C.S. Lewis would talk about not being serious, or he didn't actually talk about it in those directive terms, but like that sensibility, I would look at it and go, you're not looking at life for what it is. Like, you're naive and you're in denial. The older I get, the less, I think it has something to do with aging too. Yeah. The less you look at it that way, because death is coming at you like a train.
Yeah.
So I think that helps you appreciate the little things that aren't as, they're not little, like they're actually big. But I still think sometimes, and I see this especially as a minister, like, I don't always have, like, a sermon isn't always meant to be uplifting.
Yeah.
Because that's not what the Bible is. Like, there are psalms that just end with, like, God, kill me now.
Right.
Like, give me cancer now, God. Like the SNL skit. Like, and that's the end. or like the book of Ecclesiastes,
right?
All is meaningless, or you know, it's and you know, and I think that expecting everything to be uplifting is as unhealthy as expecting everything to fall apart and be terrible.
Yeah, I was 10 years ago when I was, SBC Acts 29 pastor, I was far more negative and feeding my dark side, sort of reveled in it, like thinking I'm like the artistic depressed, and I don't know if it was when I came out of evangelicalism or came out of Reformed theology or just age, where also I was bipolar and undiagnosed. Now I'm on meds, so that probably had something to do with it too. But because I used to go into like 2-week depressions where I couldn't wake up till like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And I still have minor dips, but it's like a day and then I bounce back, or a few, like 2 or 3. But I still wake up by like noon and make my bed and try. Where back then I couldn't even try if I wanted to. But yeah, I think I've become far more looking at the whimsicalness now. And again, maybe that's the atheism, and this is my one shot, and I better take it. And maybe it's the meds
or some combination.
So way to start off our holiday episode on
happy holidays.
So one of the things I think that maybe shocks people is I still miss part of Christianity, and like Christmas and Easter are the two times where it really comes out. Now, I mean that those are the two big ones. And I know, especially in Protestantism, like there are other more minor holidays in the other Christian traditions that are still celebrated. But I think first off, for Christmas, like it comes right after the solar equinox, the winter equinox, which is just like a super dark, right? Which is why you have Saturnalia and you have Yule, like all over the world, people are like, man, it's dark and scary and feels like death, right? So let's like burn the biggest tree imaginable for a few days and get really drunk and party
and say the word merry instead of happy.
Yeah. And I think most historians / theologians say that that Jesus was probably born in the late spring, early summer, based on shepherds sleeping outside and other historical evidence. And we know that it was pronounced on the 25th later as sort of like taking over Saturnalia, but it makes sense. Like, hey, it's really dark. Yeah, but like this baby who was going to save everyone was born. So let's celebrate that. And
right. Yeah, exactly it.
And I think like those two parts of the Christian story, like Christmas and Easter, I think they resonate with people, and not in the Romans 1 way. Like, right? I think it resonates in the opposite way, because every culture before Christianity, in sense, has had a resurrection story, right? Whether it's Persephone or Akhenaten or Osiris, like there's this, and I know the Reformed people are going to be like, well, that's Romans 1 too. But I think it goes the opposite way. It doesn't come from a creator down. It comes from it comes from our mind, and we project it upward. Because like death is sad, right? And like most people don't want it to end. Like the most feedback I got on the episode where I was like, I'm not afraid of death, I'm afraid of dying, and read the physicist thing, everyone's like, that's not comforting. Right. But yeah, and maybe it's also because I was not medicated, but like I get much more down when it's dark. And I don't know if I had seasonal affective disorder or it's just like human nature, but like getting sad and then realizing that you've lost this glimmer of hope in the darkness, it's a very emotional thing. So typically, and I want to say, like, I feed into it at this point in a healthy way, where I just, I hate to use the word mindful, but like mindfully, like sit with my emotions. So my Christmas Eve, like, tradition is after the kids go to bed and everyone else is asleep, I put on It's a Wonderful Life and I cry my eyes out. And I do, like, I've seen it, I don't know, 100 times, and I know what's going to happen, right? And every time at the end, like, I'm even tearing up thinking about, like, the bell ringing and just everyone bringing George the money. Like, it. So I do that to feel the feels and let the cries out, and then, I listen to non-pop Christian music or Christmas music. Yeah. So, like, Handel's Messiah, "Oh Holy Night" by sung by Josh Groban, right? Like these more emotional, like, Mariah Carey's fine, but like, Christmas shoes. So that's sort of what I do. And it is a time that I mourn. I don't very often mourn losing my faith. In fact, I look at it as a boon for the majority of my life and who I am and what I've become. But Christmas is a time that I mourn it, because I used to, like, it was something that, even if I was super depressed around that time, I could get out of depression for a day or two, even, and then I might have gone back in, or it might have been able to lift me out entirely. So
that's really good, Nate. And thanks for some of your vulnerability there. I think that's a more Christian way to approach Christmas than the way I see in most Protestant churches. I won't speak for what I've been calling high church. Although I think even there, sometimes it can be a little too high. It's like, it's Christmas time. Let's celebrate Christmas. Something about you being able. Well, something about the fact that you are, in a way, distanced from having to celebrate the holiday as an observer of the religion makes your approach to it, like, I don't know, just that much more beautiful. I used to hate Christmas season until I realized it wasn't, that Christmas season was the end of Christmas and not December. That actually, the season that we're in is Advent right now. Right. And that the 12 days of Christmas, the first day of Christmas is the 25th. Right. And that goes to January 6th. Yeah. Epiphany. Not what you think it is. Not that. It's Epiphany. January 6th. And so once I discovered that Advent was Advent, like, I stopped hating quote unquote Christmas season. Because what I saw before, and I think I'm not alone in this, was just like unbridled commercialism. Yeah. Like, cloaked in forced merriment. Like, just the phrase I've been telling Shirley since, like, the day before Thanksgiving. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Are you familiar? So it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. So not only, so I do, the It's a Wonderful Life Christmas Eve, but a few weeks before, it's, we go through the fun ones, and Christmas Vacation is one of my favorite. But the point where the wife goes, it's Christmas, Clark. Everyone's miserable. Right. And I'm like, it's the holidays. Everyone's miserable. You're sucking all of you're bringing it into the darkness. Like, commercialism actually brings it into the darkness that the whole point of the season is meant to avoid. Yeah. And you're right. Like, Jesus probably was not born in the early winter.
Yeah.
But the meaning of Jesus' birth is perfectly placed at the beginning of winter because of all the things you said, and I think that to truly anticipate something, which is what Advent is about, the anticipation of the birth of the child that will save us all.
Right.
If Advent is about anticipation, then frantically thinking about what you're going to make for dinner, how you're going to afford all of these gifts, who's going to buy who what, how you're going to travel, how you're going to get together, how you're going to beat traffic, couldn't be less about anticipation.
Yeah. Though it could be about anxiety.
It definitely could be about anxiety. So it used to be like a season that I dreaded. And I realized I'm not dreading the season, I'm dreading what we've turned the season into. And now it's like one of my favorite times of year. Not because it's dark all the time, not because it's cold.
Yeah.
But because that knowledge of that darkness plus that knowledge of what Advent is and what it's supposed to mean, I look forward to the anticipation. And no, I don't like the commercialism, but I do like that first snow that we haven't had yet.
Oh, we had it. We got 2.5 inches.
But like that first Advent snow
is
different than like first November snow.
November, you're like, ah.
Some years, some years that snow happens like when people are shopping. So
yeah,
and when you're doing it in like a strip mall, it doesn't have any romance to it. But like, I try to do most of my shopping actually in the small businesses in downtown Brattleboro, if I can. I try to. And when that's bustling, like when you have like a small New England town like Brattleboro, and the only reason people are outside is to shop,
right?
Because
it's
the weather's terrible.
Yeah.
But it's not like there's snow on the ground and salt on the road. It's just like a little bit of snow. And every few years you get that idyllic situation where it's like, oh, it's starting to snow, and you feel like you're shopping in a snow globe.
Yeah.
You're
like, this is the Hallmark movie.
That's the stuff.
Yeah.
And that I love that, and I've grown into liking that about Advent season. And the other thing I like is like you could look at like dark at 4:30 as it's dark at 4:30, or you could look at it as nature, God, the universe saying, this is a time to. This is the chill time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, when I think about the older celebrations, I think even Christmas, is when you celebrated the 12 days, and it was 1750. Although, fun fact, the Puritans banned Christmas, so 1750 it might not have been celebrated.
The Puritans banning fun.
They felt it was too pagan, and people were pretty much having too much fun, but like with alcohol and merriment.
Yeah.
I think during those, until you get electricity, like, just everything has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's like this natural cycle of, okay, it's time to burn the giant log and drink mead. And like let our hair down a little bit and know that like at 4:30 there's nothing left to, like, we can't go hunting, we can't go gathering, like let's like hibernate,
right?
Ish,
right?
And we don't get that.
Yeah,
and our culture is much more like do more at Christmas, like you said.
It's really the perfect time to sit and wait.
Yeah,
and like to anticipate the thing that's coming. And I'm with you. I have the same sensibilities around Christmas, although I don't think I get quite as emotional about It's a Wonderful Life. And I don't have the same relationship with deconversion because I haven't deconverted.
To be fair, I did it before I deconverted as well.
Okay.
Like, I mean,
yeah, because that would.
I remember when A Wonderful Life played on every single channel for a month straight. At any given moment in time, you could find It's a Wonderful Life on TV. Mm-hmm. And even then, I'm like, it's the 17th time watching it this December. Mm-hmm. Every time a bell rings.
Yeah. But I resonate completely with that. What is it like about? It's its own description. We were talking about description of coffee on the last episode.
Yeah.
It's like, this tastes like happiness, and I was making fun of it. It's like, what does happiness taste like? But it's like, what is that? And there's probably some music theorists that could tell you exactly what it is. What's going on chemically.
Yeah.
Or musically, and how that connects with your heartstrings, quote unquote. But Christmas music sounds different, like the old stuff, not,
right?
Like not the Mariah Carey stuff, but Handel's Messiah and God Rest You Merry Gentlemen and all the old hymns, Silent Night, and all that. Like, there's like if you were to just start singing Silent Night in March, I guess is wrong.
Right. Or O Come, Emmanuel.
Right. So Christmas music just sounds like Christmas music.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. And you only want it in December.
Right.
You don't want it in January. You don't want it.
It's true.
Certainly don't want it in July.
It's true. Yeah. I wonder if that's just cultural expectation. Like, do you think in 1500 they were singing hymns that we now call Christmas hymns?
No. Like, most of the hymns we sing aren't that old.
But you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I guess most of the hymns we sing are probably 17 to 1800.
Yeah.
Maybe up to... Amazing Grace was like 1840, 1850.
Oh, I was just meaning like Christmas hymns, but yeah.
But
yeah.
Placing that in the same...
Yeah. I think there might be some similarities in tunes, like in melodies and harmonies, probably, I would imagine. I don't know for sure, but the carryover. But to your point, it is cultural because there's definitely like a Northern European, Scottish, English, Irish sound that has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
It's like, why does everybody love Be Thou My Vision? It's an Irish bar song, that's why. And all our pop songs are still basically based on those same musical theories and those same notes put together, and every time you hear it you go, I don't know, is this the Irish blood talking? Why do I like this? Yeah, it probably is. Imagine if you were from some other culture, wouldn't have.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can listen to other cultures' music and you're like, this is not music. Like, like there's somewhere you're like, this seems like noise.
Yeah.
But they would have the same reaction.
Right. Right.
Just riffing. One of the ironic things about what we're talking about is if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, it's completely irrelevant.
Right.
like
exactly.
Like celebrating Christmas in Australia means that it's close to the longest day of the year. So your Christmas lights aren't getting turned on till 9 or 10 p.m. because it's still light out.
Correct.
So it's...
And the Aboriginal people of Australia didn't celebrate Christmas.
Right.
It's a carryover from Western Northern Europe for the most part.
Yeah.
And so just so interesting that the Puritans would be like, oh, this is pagan. Like, what, Norse paganism? Maybe. I mean, it's like...
bringing a tree inside, mistletoe, wreaths, those are all Yule.
Right.
Even Santa is like...
Yeah.
From Krampus. And like Christians spun it of like St. Nicholas, who, from all accounts, I think really existed and really did those things. I think he also like punched a few people in the face, if I remember correctly.
Go look at my Facebook.
Yeah.
That's debatable.
Okay.
It's disputable.
Okay. But, like, the modern depiction of Santa is like Krampus-esque and elves.
Yeah.
Right? Even reindeer. Like, reindeer didn't exist in Palestine or even Rome. Or
Right. Right. And, like, you would always make fun of it growing up. You'd be like, and especially, well, yeah, evangelicals made a point. When I was a kid, the Baptist church I grew up in would always make a point. The phrase was, Jesus is the reason for this season. Have you ever heard that one?
Yeah.
It's like, stop with all this reindeer, Santa Claus nonsense. That's not what this is about. It's about celebrating Jesus' birth.
Yeah.
And I always just wanted to be like, well, pick a day in April. Wait, we already got one of those. You know, like, pick a day, possibly October. You know, that's another one that people like.
Reformation Day, man.
Yeah, like,
like,
pick it.
Again, they're like, Halloween's too pagan. Let's celebrate Reformation Day.
Because at the end of the day, like, it is about all the cultural stuff.
Yeah.
It isn't about It is in spirit about celebrating the birth of Jesus, but it isn't in body, in literal, material, historical form about that. It is, therefore, about Santa and reindeer and elves, just as much as it's about Jesus and Mary.
Yeah.
And even that has been so mythologized. It's like, you know, like the Peanuts Christmas special and Linus reads the Christmas story. You're like,
From Luke,
if we want to be real about, you know, and we've even had like conversation about the archaeological evidence about whether Jesus even existed, but assuming that he did, like, if you want to be real about that, there was nothing romantic about that,
right?
As it's described in the Bible. It wasn't like, so Jesus was born in a feeding trough,
right, and then had to run,
and on the run, and like nobody wanted to have anything to do with this
whore,
with this you know, vagabond. These refugees,
teenager who couldn't keep it.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, but that's not how it's portrayed in Christmas pageants or.
Right.
So Mary always looks pristine, and baby Jesus is always like white and like rosy cheeks.
Mary has alabaster skin, as is common in the Middle East.
So I mean, I'm just saying, like, if it's already mythologized, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with like romanticizing it. I mean, if you really think Jesus was white, if you actually think that, and I don't think many people really do.
But I think just most people don't think about it.
Then I might have a problem with it. Like if you don't realize, if you're a grown person, you don't realize Jesus is probably brown skinned. You're like, then I might have a problem with it. But that's not what that's actually not what I'm saying is like, that's actually not what we're celebrating.
Yeah.
That's not what we're collectively celebrating.
Right.
We're collectively celebrating the idea of salvation and hope.
Right. Darkness being pushed back.
So bring on the reindeer. Bring anything that like makes you go, bring it on. Yeah. It's time for it. Bring on the elves. All of that stuff.
When I was an evangelical and we had our first kid, the pastor who was training me, this is before I was church planting, before I was a pastor myself, was like, you can't do Santa. Like, so we didn't for our first two kids. And part of it was Jesus is the reason. Part of it was like, if you lie to them about Santa, why are they going to believe you about Jesus later on? Which is interesting that this evangelical would equate the two, one being pure mythology and the other being something that he believes is true. Mm-hmm. And like that's a whole episode in itself. Like at some level, does he know that it's anyway? Because like I can lie to you about one thing that is, I can be like, I saw a dragon. And my kids would be like, that's fun role play, but anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a bit in Chesterton about the idea of fairy tales, and like why they're good. And I'm totally not going to quote him because I can't even remember. But I think I got the idea down enough to say it. The idea being like the way that kids believe is not the way that adults believe.
Right.
There's always like a part of the kid that's like, eh. You know, like even when you were 6, you were skeptical at least. You're like, nah, that doesn't make any sense. We all know it doesn't
I mean, the
make
kids
any
ask,
sense.
right? How does he get to every house?
Right.
Does he go to Jewish houses?
Right. But then you go,
There's-
but then kids go, no, it'd be really fun to believe this.
Yeah.
And then they believe it.
Yeah.
And then they stop. So is it worse to... Well, here's what I'm saying. You don't even have to tell your kids that there is a Santa. That would be the positive lie, right? Like, hey, kids, but you... I'm going to tell you something you didn't know, even though you see it everywhere. You see it on every commercial. You see it everywhere you go. But I'm going to tell you something you didn't know, and it's going to be a bold-faced lie. There is a Santa. You don't... Like, that scenario doesn't make any sense. And then the other side, they will grow out of it.
Yeah.
And they will never go, my parents lied to me.
I'm
Society
so
lied to me.
traumatized.
Unless you overdid it, because you can. Like, if you... But even then, I think your kids get, when they get older, they get, my dad was
Right.
like playing with my imagination. So like,
Yeah.
and you almost
making it
appreciate
more
it. Like,
whimsical, right?
I kind of wish my dad, well, there was one Christmas, and he only did it one Christmas, where we set out the cookies.
Yeah.
And then they were gone in the morning. And then like my dad left like a piece from like Santa's hat. Like he left like a little fur ball like next to the table.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't look at that and go, Dad, you jerk, you totally traumatized me.
So my first 2 kids are far more traumatized
Yeah.
that we didn't do Santa. They're like, they feel like they got robbed.
So you didn't do Santa because
evangelicals telling me not to.
Yeah.
And they really like, in first grade were like, don't tell your friends. Right. And like,
Right.
So these kids, like 6 and 7-year-olds are like, we know the truth, but we can't tell anyone. Which is also ironic considering evangelicals are we know the truth and we need to tell everybody.
Right.
But yeah, to this day, like my 16-year-old's like, we're doing Santa with the younger kids and they play along. Mm-hmm. And the younger kids go to bed and they're like, we didn't get Santa. I'm just like, I'm so sorry. I did lots of things wrong. And as to like what your dad does, we do the cookies. We make I always did the cookies and milk, and we actually put vegetables out for the reindeer and some water because they get hungry too. And I bite it and I spit it out and I break it. Like it's always on our porch. We incorporated. Shirley used to make the Christmas cookies, so now we make the Christmas cookies. We frost them. And Santa eats some of them and then leaves a little note being like, they were delicious. I didn't eat them all because I had cookies at Billy's house too. Or
Yeah.
And the younger kids, they wake up and they're like, oh, the reindeer ate the carrots.
Yeah. Right. And they know, deep down, they know.
Right. I mean, my deck can hold like 10 people. It can't hold 8 reindeer in a sleigh.
Right. But like, you want to believe that. And you're released to believe it, is the way that I look at it. Like, you're released to believe the fantastical.
Yeah.
And that's what's special about this season. But like, we don't do Elf on the Shelf, but we do a thing inspired by Elf on the Shelf, because proper Elf on the Shelf is creepy.
Right.
But the idea behind it is fun. So we bought one of like those little yellow Mr. Bendy toys. It's called Mr. Bendy's, just like a yellow man.
Okay.
But my oldest son, actually, I don't know if this is PG rated, what I'm about to say, but my oldest son observed that Mr. Bendy did not have testicles or a penis. So now it's Ms. Bendy, which might just be like completely in our sort of quote unquote woke culture, not even appropriate either. But anyway, it's Ms. Bendy, not Mr. Bendy. It's this yellow person that you can like bend and you can make him like his arm twist around certain things. Yeah. But we do this thing in our house where like, that's all year round. It's not just like for December. I wake up in the morning and Miss Bendy isn't where she was the day before. But now all the kids participate in it. Like now my son will like go. And when the kids were younger, I think they're all old enough at this point to know that it's just a game. But I just think it's completely normal to add magic into our lives, magic and mythology. And what's not normal is to insist that our magic and mythology is completely real or that it's completely fake.
Yeah.
And therefore we should abstain. Like, I think that's what we're saying. We collectively.
Yeah. We don't do Elf on the Shelf, but we used to do Dinovember.
Yeah.
And I would set up elaborate scenes of like the dinosaurs fighting Transformers and like destroy the bathroom one year, like toothpaste everywhere, toilet paper, or
right.
I don't have the energy to do it anymore, but when the kids really love that, especially after we left evangelicalism, it was sort of the two older kids still understood that it was fake, but they were able to participate,
right,
and watch their brothers and sisters have whimsy, and because Dinovember was in no way related to evangelicalism in the church and the trauma, it was like different than Santa.
Yeah.
Where like they weren't mad that they didn't get Dinovember.
Right.
They were like, we get to be on the other side of Dinovember.
Yeah.
Right? So we know a secret that's fun instead of like, we know the truth and can't disenchant all these children that Santa doesn't exist.
That's weird. I don't know if this has anything to do with what we're talking about, except that it's Christmas and something you said reminded me of it. But you remember the movie The Santa Claus from the 90s?
Yeah.
It's a classic now.
Yeah. And the Santa Claus 2.
Didn't watch them. Oh. I just in principle I was like no, but maybe they're good.
They are.
Okay. I should watch them. But
and they just came out with another one on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I saw that. But I rewatched the Santa Claus with my kids for the first time. It's like it way darker than I remember.
Yeah, it was like the elf is trying to kill him right?
Well,
because he wants to be Santa.
The old Santa died.
Right.
The whole plot depends on Santa dying.
Yes. And
we were watching it, and my son was like, he just killed Santa. I was like, no. That's what Charlie said. He killed Santa. Santa fell off the roof because he startled him. It was an accident. He's like, yeah, but Santa died. Yeah. And then my older son, who's 9, he was, more skeptical. He's kind of skeptical even for a 9-year-old. He's like, the whole time he's like, like Charlie's parents, he's like, they're being totally reasonable. like, he's like, this isn't his words. I'm kind of putting words into his mouth because I don't remember what he said verbatim. But my son is basically like, Charlie is ruining his social life by, and there's also the observation that like, it's sort of like a body transformation horror story. Because he's not getting fat because he's eating too much.
Right.
He's not growing he does his best to not look like that. He tries as hard as he can to not look like Santa. But he must look like Santa. And I was just like, this isn't what I remember.
Yeah. I think remembering it, the Santa Claus 2 is when one of the, like, I don't know if it's a toy or an elf goes rogue and decides that they want to be Santa. So they kidnap the real one.
They kidnapped Tim Allen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might have even been 3. One of them, it's like, it's dark. Like
I know
they're going to murder Tim Allen to become Santa.
I think, isn't there one that Martin Short's in and he's like Jack Frost? I've seen a little bit about
Yeah,
that one. Is that the one you're talking about? Like Jack Frost wants to be Santa, so he starts a conspiracy and like I think that's the third one.
Yeah, right. Because the other one's about Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, about finding the second one's about finding him a partner.
Yeah,
because there needs to be
right.
Santa has to have a Mrs. Claus,
right?
And this Santa happens to be divorced. So,
final thought on Santa. So with the younger kids, we do Santa, but one of the things we did, even with Sarah before we divorced, when we were rethinking our life, was Santa doesn't bring the presents in our house. Santa brings the stocking and a book. And we kind of did that because, reading people, like, some kids don't get a lot. So, like, why did Santa bring a souped up, battery powered car for Bill? And, like, my neighbor in Section 8 housing couldn't afford, like, a non-used He-Man character. Right. So we make sure that the kids know that the presents came from mom and dad, and the book and some trinkets came from Santa. So, if you're listening, I think you should implement that as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think you hit on something that I wasn't consciously doing, but like I've never quite liked having half the gifts under the tree, like be from Santa. And I think that's partly why, now that you say it.
Yeah.
But also, I like the idea of, like, knowing who gave who what.
Right.
That your sibling thought of you. Or, like, I don't like the idea of, like, replacing. Maybe this is selfish. It's like, no, I bought that.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair to take credit. Because then your kids also learn, like, mom and dad see me. They take care of me.
Right. I heard what you said you wanted.
Right.
And I went out with my money that I earned, and instead of spending it on myself, I spent it on you to give you what you want so that you can be happy this day and I can watch you be happy. I do not want, as much as I've been talking up Santa this whole episode, I do not want Santa to have credit for that.
Yeah.
Unless he writes a sermon.
Are you having church on Christmas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have some hardcore Reform friends who are railing against churches that aren't having it. And I was like, is any church not having it? Like, I was a pastor when Christmas was on a Sunday. We did it.
Yeah.
Like, Easter's always on a Sunday and you do that.
Yeah. Last time Christmas was on a Sunday at my church.
7 years ago, right?
At my church. Well, there's a leap year there.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I'm bad at math. I don't know if that'd be six or eight.
It's cyclical.
It happens.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. But the last time that it happened, 2 regular people besides my family showed up. And then, like, a random family of 5. And
because the randoms come Christmas and Easter.
Right. And the random family of 5 was like, we care more about Jesus than this church does.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it was a bad look. So we actually had that discussion this year with the leadership of the church. Like, should we just cancel it? And we finally came to, like, that just sounds ridiculous.
Right.
Even if 3 people show up. So I'm not preparing a 40-minute sermon for that week.
Yeah.
I'm not even preparing anything. Like, I know what Christmas is about. I can talk about it eloquently for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll sing some hymns, and if it's just 6 people there, so what? Those 6 people will sit. It'll be a good hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was pastoring Vita Nova, we were in a college town.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, everyone clears out. So it wasn't just Christmas. Like, 2 weeks before Christmas, at one point we were having 4 services simply because I don't want to be like, oh, we were a mega church. We had like 150-ish people at our church, but the town wouldn't let more than 50 people in our place at any one time. Mm-hmm. So we had to have 4 services. Mm-hmm. And, by the second week of December, we had gone down to 1. We were like, oh, it's only 10 o'clock now. Like, the 2 p.m. services are gone.
Yeah.
and by Christmas, there were still some families, especially at the end. We had some older families. And by older, I mean like 30s, some babies.
Yeah.
It was still sparse because people were traveling. And so we did the same thing. I was like, we're going to do some Christmas music. I'm going to talk 10 minutes about hope and touchy-feelies, and then we're going to do more Christmas music, and we're going to be out in like half an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I made a joke about it in my sermon last Sunday. I don't think people quite appreciated it. Because people, they know they're not going to show up, but apparently they don't like being called out for not showing up. But I wasn't really calling them out. I was just joking about the reality that they're, I know, we both know. Let's not pretend. You're not going to be there. And it was in the context of, so I was talking about John the Baptist, who is an Advent figure, right? So talking about John the Baptist, and I was talking about, like, I wonder how long he was in the wilderness preaching to nobody before everybody showed up. I mean, maybe he just got up out of his cave one day and he's like, repent, for the kingdom of God is in the hand. Yeah. And everybody from the Judean countryside and all of Jerusalem came out to hear him. But I also like to imagine that the possibility of him doing that like every day for like 7 years. Yeah. And like nothing happening. And then one day he just goes viral. That's
probably closer to the reality.
And so I like, and I was talking about that, and so I likened it to like the Beatles lyric, Father Mackenzie writing a sermon that no one will hear, from Eleanor Rigby. Is it Father Mackenzie writing the words to a sermon that no one will hear? Yeah. And I was like, kind of like me on Christmas. And everybody was like, that's funny, Matt. That was the joke.
Any more holiday thoughts?
This Christian wants you to have all the Christmas decorations, the brightest Christmas tree, all the candy canes and the peppermints and everything. Don't shop too much. And if you do shop local, it's just better that way. If you can, if you can think of people whose Christmases can't be about having stuff because they just don't have the money to do it. Yeah. Then think of them and think of ways that maybe you can bless them this Christmas, because this is extra hard for those people, as we know. Yeah. And we talk about it every year. It's dark for them too, and they don't get to enjoy all the stuff those of us who are more privileged get to enjoy. So, and that's kind of what the gospel is about, I think, at the end of the day, is blessed are the poor. So try to bless the poor. And sorry to be so moralistic on a podcast.
So I have two parting thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah.
The first is, you're talking, and you're like, this Christian pastor wants you, and that's all of us, right?
Yeah, right.
Including me as an atheist, to have like a fun Christmas. My first year deconverting, I had so many evangelicals when I said Merry Christmas on Facebook be like, you don't even celebrate. And I was like, I can celebrate the like spirit of this thing without believing in physical resurrection of so infuriating. And then the second is, if you look around, I have like 1-2 Christmas decorations up. Mm-hmm. We decorated the whole tree. We did the shebang. Bash is 2 3/4, and about 20 minutes after everything was up, he started pulling everything down, like all the ornaments, and so we have a bare Christmas tree with lights. And
I just thought you hadn't got around to it yet.
Oh no, we did, and we had to take it all down. And what he does with the Christmas tree now, his dinner seat is the one closest to it. Mm-hmm. He's been on a pasta kick and refuses anything else, only wants pasta. And then when I cook him pasta, he decides he doesn't want it, and he wants what everyone else is eating. Yep. But the spaghetti is like garland. So at the end of every dinner, we're like, Bash, stop putting your spaghetti on the tree. And he does this thing where he goes, but I just want to. And we're like, we know.
Yeah.
Please stop.
Yeah. We have a tradition where we rotate every year between white decorations, because Rachel and me,
nice classic.
Yeah, we like
beautiful.
Just the classy like white.
Yeah,
kind of tones.
With you there.
But like the kids like the bright colors
and the chintzy.
So the compromise is like
that's nice.
So this is the year. This is the colorful year.
We just gave up, and they're like, when the kids are in high school, we can have a nice, beautiful white. But now we're like, all right,
I actually
put Kermit up.
I actually prefer like the blues and the purples.
Yeah.
To like the reds and the greens.
Yeah.
That Christmas angle in terms of aesthetics.
Yeah.
Didn't know we were going to talk about aesthetics today,
right.
But
no, our Christmas lights are white and pretty, yeah.
But the kids want the. So then we go all out like every other year because we feel like we earn our right to have the one the next year. So this is this is an even year, 2022. So that means it's colorful and when I say colorful, it's like it's just god awful.
Like Elf.
Like you just walk into the house, you're like, oh god, it's like oh my eyes.
That's funny.
So,
well, to end it on a sad note, that's not true. So we have very few Christmas decorations outside, and we have a lot less inside, partially because of Bash, but even if everything was up than I used to have, and that's because the first year of my divorce, I had bins and bins of Christmas stuff from my grandmother, from my mom, and we went to open them, and it's like a super rough year. Like Christmas is supposed to be this one, and there's dead mice and mouse poop on everything. Like we had to get rid of our tree. We had to get rid of antique, because some of those antique ornaments, they're not glass. At least in my family, because they were like fabric, and I had never seen my kids. I think they were more devastated about that than when they heard mom and dad getting a divorce. So we're slowly rebuilding our collection, and like 1 to 2 new things a year. And so this year we got the stuff on the stoop. But it's also fun with the kids, even though it's commercial. Like, all right, we're going to Target, and we're going to pick out the 2 new Christmas decorations this year, and everyone gets to pick out a new ornament. That keeps it whimsical too.
Yeah. Well, that was a good episode.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everyone. We hope it is wonderful and bright and uplifting. If you'd love to shoot us your Christmas traditions and your experience around the season, we'd absolutely love to hear.
Merry Christmas, everybody.